morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is Carla from MindPlore with Carla and Friends. And I am hoping we are live on Facebook. Maybe someone should check. Oh, we are, great. Because it was taking a long time to get live. Well, today I am back almost with the original Thursday panel who everyone loves. We don't have Allison, but we have Jeanne, and people seem to like Jeanne. So I'm happy about that. And today we are talking about mindset, changing it by using, no. Quickly say the title, Jeanne.
Changing your mindset, taking that first step.
Great. So we are taking the first step. And, you know, when you change something that you're doing, sometimes you forget what you're doing and you need a reminder. And Jeanne just did that for me. And talking about changing the mindset right away, usually it takes some courage. All of us are afraid to change because we know what has been working. But if we want things to work even better, that change in mindset, that change in our thinking, and the change in our action actually allows it to happen. Okay, Jeanne, get to work so I can do what I need to do for this show.
Okay. Well, hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us once again. And I am looking forward to this discussion. It should be pretty lively. So I wanted to start off with a couple of quotes. And if you watch classic movies and you watched Ferris Bueller's Day Off, you'll know the first quote from Ben Stein. He's the guy who's widely quoted going, Bueller, Bueller, just a great monotone. It was a great role. What he used to be was President Nixon's speechwriter, which was surprising to me. And he said, the first step in getting things you want out of life is this: decide what you want. And I'm following that up with Robert Collier, who is an American author in the self-help and metaphysical genres. And he writes, take the first step and your mind will mobilize all its forces to your aid. But the first essential is that you begin. Once the battle is started, all that is within and without you will come to your assistance. So that shows that we truly are powerful if we allow ourselves to take that first step. And then I follow that up with the great American actor Viggo Mortensen. And he writes, be kind. It's worthwhile to make an effort to learn about other people and figure out what you might have in common with them. If you allow yourself to be somewhat curious, and if you get into the habit of doing that, it's the first step to being open-minded and realizing that your points of view aren't totally opposite. So what I'm saying here is you take that first step, the universe kind of comes around and helps you with all the skills that you have, but also be open-minded to those around you, because we have more in common than we often allow ourselves to believe. So Cameron, I see you thinking deeply.
Make him talk.
He's talking.
Yes.
Make
Yes.
him talk.
Yes. Yes. Well, I mean, speaking before Jeff is always a pleasure because following him is very difficult. And I'd like to take the first step by sharing a talk that I was listening to recently from B.K. Shivani. This lady is quite something. And the one nugget I got out of her talk was essentially something we can take as a first step in changing our mindset. And the example she was giving started with a question. The question was, does our state of mind depend on the people and situations around us? And when she put this question to an audience of 500, they answered unanimously, yes. And her follow-up question was, why do you say that? And someone responded by saying, it's obvious. And to that, she then continued to explain that, all right, so if that is obvious, let's look at some scenarios. So she talks of a couple where the wife is at home, dressed up beautifully in order to greet her husband in the evening. And why is she doing that? Because it's their anniversary. The husband walks in, looks at her and says, oh, wow, you look nice. And then proceeds to his study and shouts out, can I have some tea? Without any recollection of the anniversary. And the wife is very hurt that how can he forget such an important occasion in our lives? So then she puts the question after narrating this scenario. Do you think she was right to be hurt? Everyone says yes. She says, well, do you want to be hurt in life? And this goes back to Jeanne, the quote you were sharing, decide what you want. And no one wants to be hurt, but we use the term obviously and become very reactive when a situation arises because it is based on dashed expectations. Then she gives another scenario. And that scenario is that you're at a mall and looking at shelves for things to buy. And suddenly you notice a friend, a dear old friend, at a distance. He exchanges eye contacts with you and then strangely walks away, leaving you high and dry. And you wonder what happened. And you feel kind of let down. Is that justified? So the answer is again, oh yeah, it's obvious. And this is where she begins by saying that our state of mind is of our own choosing, people and situations. If they are determining what we are thinking, then we are becoming robotic, very mechanistic. We need to remember that instead of falling into the trap of the obvious, we need to look at the options that we have, because it is those options that will allow us to feel what we want to feel. So then she replays those two scenarios and they all come up with options. What could the wife have done not to feel hurt? She said, one of them said she could have forgotten the anniversary herself, or she could have shown empathy that he is a busy man. And yes, he's the fact that he even acknowledged that I'm looking beautiful was in itself very good. And he's human, and human beings make mistakes. So there were several options that started to crop up. And that first step of realizing that nothing is obvious, you do have options, is something that's going to transform your life. This is what I truly believe. And I have applied this kind of methodology, not with the terminology that I've just shared, and it works. And it works. It's how I choose to interpret events in my life. No matter what the event is, if I'm constructive and positive about it, I'll not only protect myself and do the things that will repair a relationship, maintain positive energy in the room, but at the same time, I will be more in a state of high energy, high frequency, and attract similar experiences in my life by doing so. So the first step is use your intelligence and don't fall into the mechanistic trap of obviously. Use options. This is something which I strongly recommend, and I thank B.K. Shivani for giving me the language and so clearly explaining a phenomena that is truly common sense, but then we all know common sense is not common practice. Yeah.
common sense is just not common either. But that reminds me of Stephen Covey talking about between the stimulus and the response.
Yes.
You get to choose. And that's why I call choice one of our superpowers.
Yeah.
And it's a superpower. If you don't use it, you kind of lose it. So, I actually explain to people that between that stimulus and response, you get to choose heaven or hell. You get to choose peace or calamity. Jeff, how's that fit with you?
Well, I'll start off by going back to Cameron's example, because I've actually perhaps experienced that, and maybe it was someone's anniversary and I asked for tea, but there was a purpose behind it, you see, because we make assumptions. Part of communication is being open to communicate, and it's not just one way. But perhaps I was in a situation where I was hoping to be served tea so I could present a present that was actually very emotionally attached to having tea together. And that the only way to experience it is to actually set the person up so they totally have no expectations. So then, boom, now it's like, oh my God, wow. And it's not that they didn't forget. It's more like, wow, this is so nice. Because when you can pull away anyone's expectations for something, then you could fill it with love and a beautiful experience, which they would never expect. And that shifts everything. So in one version, sure, how could this person be so clumsy with memory to forget that it's an anniversary or a meaningful event and just go about their day or their evening as if nothing special is happening? But sometimes people do think deeper, and they actually understand how fragile life is and how fragile moments are, but are willing to take a risk at a moment to be seen to be obtuse, but really to use that moment to share deep love and appreciation and understanding. And I've been there and I've done that with intention, not to be the obtuse, but to leverage a moment and risk being misunderstood so that we can deliver much, much more. And so, and that journey took a lot of steps to set up and a lot of thinking. And so when we look at, movement, there's intentional and unintentional, there's planned and unplanned, and then there's the stuff that just happens, right? So when we're in a flow state, when we're in that magic space of being in the now, where the only thing that matters is what's happening at that moment, it's truly magical. And while I don't like or don't appreciate being evaluated based on my merit of what I'm doing, when I can take that person for the ride, the opportunities are unbounded in terms of the joy and delight that can be created. And I do think part of the whole metaphorical first step, where really I believe the journey starts with the feet below you, and it's basically setting intention and understanding purpose and putting yourself in a place where you're at peace with yourself and at peace with what it is you're looking to do. And that, many of these journeys are journeys that we do without permission of others, but hopefully we have permission of ourselves. And we allow ourselves to go unbounded in ways which perhaps we could never do before that moment. But where we're ending up almost doesn't matter, because it's the journey that matters. And it's what we experience along the way. And it's that mind space that we take with us that gives birth to so many other positive possibilities, because we are flowing, that we are the flow of the now as much as we are the journey itself. And so, I think there's so much that one can do. And it's more than wanting, it's the doing, right? I mean, I a couple of years ago, I gave up the idea of trying and just accept that we either, and it's not, maybe it's too much George Lucas Star Wars with Yoda of do or do not. There is no try, but it's more than that, because it's the reality that if we all we're doing is trying, then we're giving ourselves an out for not being successful. But if we focus on the doing, then we're doing it, and if it doesn't work out, that's okay.
It's obvious.
Hear a voice.
Someone turned on their Facebook page.
Wasn't me.
Make sure it's closed. Well, it's gone now.
All right. Anyway, so voices. So anyway, I lost where I was, but I was just getting to that. When we are working and walking with intention, when we're taking those steps, that we're on a journey which we don't always even understand until we get to that destination. And that sort of, and being on those types of journeys, for me, it's not where you're getting to, but how you're getting there. And being open to just observing things that you never saw before. And I remember years ago when I started to walk through my neighborhoods as opposed to drive through my neighborhoods, I picked up so much more detail. And I had lived in a town for 25 years, and I had been through these streets many times in a car or a bicycle. But when I walked that journey, I got to take in so much more depth. I got to hear birds singing. I got to look at the beautiful flowers that were planted. I got to smell literally the roses, and got to experience something that I never would have experienced if I'd not taken that walk. And I'm the kind of person that likes getting lost in the town they live in as an opportunity to actually just explore and to be empowered with that ability to just be open to being on that journey of life, and being prepared to accept that we don't always know where we're going, but wherever we end up, we're meant to be. So I'll stop there.
It's very true. You brought up a memory for me that, my parents, when we had vacations, would stick us all into the Vista Cruiser that we had. That's a big station wagon that actually had a window up at the top so we could see outside. And they put the 7 of us in there with themselves, and then they would get on the road, and we'd be going to Detroit. So we knew where our destination was. We were going to go see my grandmother and grandfather and all of my cousins and such. And we knew it would be a 3-day trip. But what we didn't know is what the route that my dad would choose would be. So we always got to see interesting little towns, interesting spaces. He would stop, at various parks. We got to see Yellowstone one time going through. So I do remember bears, walking by and such. So we never really knew what was going to be on the journey, but we always kind of knew what our destination was. And that's something that's relatively simplistic in discussing travel these days, but it's definitely, a good illustration of it's the journey. The things that we can learn that, as Ben Stein says, you have to decide where you want to go, but the rest, of the quotes kind of tell you that you can decide where you want to go, but the universe is kind of going to take you on that journey. So you learn what you need to learn, and you can become, I think, more powerful in the sense that I think I shared this in the last session. The question is, do you know how to make God laugh? You tell him your plans, because we have vision and insight into our little world. But when you can go outside of our little world, there's so much more that we can attain. And that's when the inner world and the outer world conspire to push you forward. You're going to see things that you may never have thought that you would see. Carla, you look ready to jump in.
I'm just thinking, and I'm going to bring up something that may get us off topic, but I think it's important. One of you guys mentioned communication, and you were talking about listening and speaking, and the two are so important. And very often in our mindset or in our way of thinking, we get stuck in the words. We get stuck in how we are thinking, and where you think, oh, everyone understands what we're saying and understands what we are thinking, and I don't need to be clear because we're all on the same page. But the truth is, we are not. We all think slightly differently, and we all use words in a slightly different way. And because of this, when we're talking about mindset, what may mean something to me may mean something completely different to Jeff or Kamran, and they'll think I'm crazy, and probably more so because men definitely think differently than women. And even talking to Jeanne, who were on the same page as least by gender, we may be saying the opposite thing. So if we're talking about taking the first step, what are we really talking about? And how are we actually thinking? And are we talking in the same language? All four of us, are we talking a little differently? So I know I changed the topic a little, but I am curious what you guys would answer to that. And Kamran, I want to hear you first.
Thank you. Reality is what Jeff talked about a bit a while back. And I think when we look at reality, we need to understand that it is a subjective phenomena. Communication is also very, very subjective, and that everyone on this planet, including you and me, live in our own world of our own creation. And therefore, anything that comes into my world, I see it in my way. Like Frank Sinatra, he sang that song. I did it my way. Now, what was the way? I wonder. So the point here is that, of course, some terminologies can be very plain and simple, like fetch me a knife. Even that could be perceived as a weapon or as a tool to make, cut carrots and tomatoes. I mean, the word knife itself has so many interpretations. It baffles me. So you're absolutely right. And I think the first step here would be empathy. The empathy part is the key, in my view, which is I getting a visa on arrival when I speak to another person, and me taking the trouble of acknowledging that I know nothing. I better first understand the language the other person speaks, the world in which the other person lives, the circumstances which the other person is experiencing, without going through that trouble. For me to make any utterance may completely fall off the cliff. And the biggest challenge in such a forum, for instance, we have listeners out there whom we don't know. I have no idea who the audience right now is. There may be people who are going through a very difficult patch listening to this, maybe finding an insight from what Jeanne is saying, or Jeff is saying, or you are saying, or I'm saying. But they may be finding that insight, which is very useful to them, but we, or at least I, may not have said anything of that magnitude, which the person has taken it to mean. Or I may be perceived as completely off the track or irrelevant because what I'm saying is not making any sense to them as listeners. So this is an absolutely important phenomena. That's why interpersonal communication, face-to-face communication is critical, in which listening has to be top of the agenda.
And knowing that, and I totally agree, I've had conversations with people where I think we're saying the same thing, and I get it off the conversation, and I'm wondering, what the heck did that person just say? It sounded the same. And we're talking about the mindset. And in our mindset, don't we need to be able to go with what we see in our heart more than what Jeanne could say, I hate MindPlore. I don't want to do this ever again. And Jeff could look at her and say, you know, I agree. I'm tired of this MindPlore. Carla's just off the rocker. And Kamran's like, but I like Carla. I'm not sure if she's so crazy, but she is crazy. I'm not just putting anyone down here. And isn't that because we all think in a different manner? I know, Jeannie, I'm getting off topic, but
well, I can kind of gingerly take it back, but it's called perspective. And first I want to say that there's a difference between talking and communicating. Talking has a lot of different ways of I'm just talking, period. Nobody needs to hear me. It typically is a one way. I give a talk when I'm up on a stage and I'm talking to a group of 50 to 350 people. Talking has a lot of different definitions, but communicating is a two-way street. There's a give and a take. There's talking and there's listening, but in between there's understanding, and that understanding comes from perspective. And when we want to make a change, it's important that we understand this, because everybody else looking at us has their own perception and their own perspective of what we're doing. And one of the phenomenon that I've encountered whenever I've tried to make a change is that there's going to be somebody who's going to pull me back, because that's a comfort zone. I'll use an example, a very simplistic example. When I was younger, my son was younger, he always knew me with glasses, and the doctor wanted me to try contacts. So I put contacts in and I show up, and my son is acting like I am somebody completely different. I mean, literally, he's like 5 or 6 years old. And, he didn't quite recognize me because he's looking for the glasses. And what that little urchin said was, Mama, you can't do that. You have to wear your glasses. That's who you are. From a 6-year-old, that's, a pretty definitive statement, and that's kind of what happens. He wasn't comfortable. So he goes, Mommy, put it back. Well, that happens in every life. When I was dealing with people that needed 12-step programs, when they tried to make the change, the people around them would pull them back. And it was really hard for them to make the changes that they needed, because we have our comfort zones. But my comfort zone is completely different than Cameron's. I might get really nervous talking to 350 people, but he's up talking to 3,500 all the time, because his experience, his life is different. So we have to take into consideration what people are thinking or reacting to when we make the choice of how we're going to act or react. And, understanding that they come from a different perspective is really important for us in communicating. And when we make those changes, we may need to think about the language that we're using or the examples that we're using, so that we could say, I need to make this change. And I'll give you a real world example. When my ex-husband was an alcoholic, obviously that's why I know about the 12-step stuff. And I made some very big changes when I decided that wasn't going to work for me. And my mother, God bless her and God rest her soul, came at me with, you need to come back in the house. You need to do this. You need to do that. And I looked at her and I realized that she didn't understand what I was going through. She didn't understand the struggle inside my head. And I needed to get away from a bunch of people that were drinking right at this moment, because just the act of people drinking and getting a little out of control was putting up all of my barriers. So I actually said to her, you don't understand, Mom. This is not a safe place for me. I need to leave. And I I think that to her, that felt like a slap in the face because I was very direct. But later on, when we talked about it, she said, I get it. I understand. So I had to give myself the space so that I could make the change I needed and the people around me didn't pull me back in. And I had to make it clear to those around me who loved me that this is something I had to do for me. And it was very difficult, emotionally wrought, but it was an important first step. And I'll tell you, I've been on a different life path ever since. And that was 30 years ago. I sometimes think back and go, how did you have the strength to do that? Well, you know what? I didn't. And people would say, you know, how do you work a full-time job and be a single parent? And I actually ended up saying, I don't. What I do is I take a step. I put one foot in front of the other. I get my son to school every day, and then I go to work. And then I focus on work. And then when it's time, I go home and I pick him up. I don't think about it. I just put one foot in front of the other. And, you know, it goes back to, what do you want? Where do you want to go? I knew what I wanted to do was raise a beautiful young man without exposing him to the chaos that I had been going through. So putting one foot in front of the other, taking the first step. And now I can look back 30 years and go, oh, wow, he's turned out into a great young man, you know, and I made it through. And, you know, someday there are stories I'm going to tell, but I had to make sure people around me understood my perspective.
I would jump in if I could, because I just want to set context. You know, when we communicate, generally speaking, there's, you know, there are many ways we can communicate, but usually it's either one-to-one, one-to-many, many-to-many, and many-to-one. Many-to-one only came of vogue on the internet, let's say around 2005 or 2006, when Twitter enabled the ability for a back channel to exist where we could all harmonize around a word or a trending phrase, and we chipped in our thoughts about that. But one-to-one communication's been around forever, as much as many-to-many. One-to-many is sort of whenever we're broadcasting, whether we realize it or not, right? When we pause and not even listening for feedback, we're just broadcasting. And you could be broadcasting, talking to your partner, or broadcasting to 3,500 people on stage. And that changes everything. And the other things that I'm aware of when we're communicating is context and content. I mean, there are 5 C's I play with. There's also, you know, understanding the community. And then, you know, frankly, what is the conversation? And sometimes that conversation will end up driving commerce. But it's certainly the context and content matters as much as how you're presenting it. And dare I say, listening too. I mean, to speak without listening is broadcasting. And when we look at the journeys we're on, you know, now we're living in times where there are multiple layers for each one of these pieces, because we could be sharing a live video. We could also be in our head. We could be thinking all these things, but not speaking outside our mind space, but we're actually communicating with ourselves, finding inner peace. And we're connecting at a level that many others may not get to. If we get to a high vibration, a high frequency, we may not necessarily need to go outside if we keep it on the inside. And because not every communication is necessarily meant to be shared. And some of the journeys that we go on are never shared. I mean, people have battles with many different things that are addictive, non-addictive, relationships, non-relationships. And depending upon how public you are or how private you are, there's some things that you've done that no one else will ever know, but you know. And words that you share and things that you do are all examples of communications. But sometimes the best journeys you've ever been on, no one will ever know, but you did that and you made that happen. And hopefully that's good enough. And there are times when we want to be heard, we want to be validated, we want to be seen. And that's a whole other conversation to be had. And so when we go on journeys, you know, look, there's in the way the internet's evolved over the last 25 years, even storytelling's changed. and for that matter, what creates influence, and for what matter, what stories are even being influenced or being seen and being heard, because most content that is being shared in real time has artificial intelligence engines now driving what's pertinent to you, because whatever platform you're on is deciding for you what you want to see. So there's so the other part of communication is the synchronous and asynchronous. When you're communicating in real time versus delays. And platforms like Facebook, for example, and Twitter were really fun in the beginning, because if I'm watching a sunrise and on the other side of the world, someone's seeing a sunset, I had all these wonderful conversations with strangers where we were watching the beauty of the world. But one day, Twitter decided to delay tweets. And while I was experiencing a sunrise, I didn't see the person experiencing the sunset until many hours later, because some other higher authority, in this case software, decided that it was more important to curate certain things and not others. And if you've ever been in social media the last number of years, I like living in the now. And when I could be in the now in real time with friends, that was beautiful. I loved Instagram when I could be at an event and all of us were sharing the same images and we were experiencing the same natural beauty. And nowadays it's sometimes 24 hours delayed before I see something that my friend posted, even though we're at the same beach watching sunrise. And when I look at that as far as the conversation, our journeys are our journeys. And whether we're on a journey to experience life and to appreciate the magical moments it represents, whether we want to inspire and bring awe and amazement to others, well, we just want to be kind to ourselves. I mean, sometimes the journeys we must go on are ones that, it's like something has to change and that changes me. And then we have to allow ourselves the strength to do whatever is needed in order for us to change, right? Even if you want outside validation, you have to validate it on the inside and allow yourself, and not to beat yourself up, and to give yourself all the words of encouragement that frankly no one else in your inner circle could even give you, because they don't know what your struggles are. They don't hear you. They don't hear where you're weak. So it's these journeys we go on, the ones that are public, yes, we're seen, but it's sort of like looking at a celebrity and saying they were an overnight success, but it took 17 years. But in your eyes, they're an overnight success because you only heard about them yesterday. And oh my God, look at this. They're amazing. So, our journeys, some of them are life journeys, but they do appear to be very short spanned, because depending upon the context and the content that was shared. All right, I said enough.
But you said a lot of good stuff.
You said a lot of good stuff, but I want to come back to the whole thing about words. I may have heard what you said in one way. Jeanne may have heard it in another way, and so is Kamran. And that may be completely different from anyone else in the world.
Absolutely. That's part of the human experience.
And there is a skill, Carla, that we can develop in learning how to communicate, and that's something that when I'm training somebody on how to talk to the media, it's a skill called summarizing and bridging. So you give in a short answer, you say, so Jeff, what I hear you saying is it's really important to be aware of your own inner work. And when you want to communicate that, to be aware that others may interpret it differently. Is that correct? Now, see, I've summarized it. I'm looking for some feedback, and then I can bridge into what I want to talk about next.
And Jeanne, I think part of what Carla is also bringing out, what you're bringing out, is that everyone has a different value system. So when I speak about my experiences, people can relate it or non-relate to what I'm saying. And then they could prioritize the value or the waste, if you will, of what I said, because frankly, some people may say, who cares about sunrises and sunsets? Who cares about the night sky? Who cares about that? So they totally disregard everything that I say because it's worthless to them. And others all of a sudden may realize when they were kids, they used to go out and they used to enjoy those sunrises. And all of a sudden it brings their headspace into a place they had not been to in 18 years. So I do believe that we all experience life separately, differently, but at the same time. And it's our own personal context that gives us the joy and delight of being able to experience that magic and interpret it independently. and determine for ourselves what is meaningful and meaningless without regard to others, but with full respect.
I agree.
And that's the whole.
Yeah, sorry, Carla. This brings us to another aspect, which I think is filters that we have in our minds. We are very selective in what we pick up and what we completely ignore. And it is happening unconscious to us. And that is why I find that the subject of self-awareness, the deep dive that we need to make every now and then, and the me time is so important, because we need filters, and at the same time, we need to know what filters we have and what are we taking in and what are we keeping out.
Yes.
And I feel that the first step might be, what am I keeping in? What am I, shutting out? Is that what's harming me? Perhaps I need to relook at my filters and be aware.
Another interesting point that I'm going to bring up is, because we think differently, we look at mindset differently. Even on this panel, I'm not sure where their mindsets are. I have a basic idea, but I don't know for sure because I'm not in their mind. So you may be listening to us and thinking that we are the experts in mindset, and whatever I say or what anyone on this panel says, take it like God sent it to you and do it exactly like we're saying. Absolutely not, because your mind is different from anyone else's mind. I know myself. I've looked at everyone being better than I, and because I think they're better than me, they tell me to do something and I look at it and I'm like, I'm not doing that. You are absolutely crazy. And Jeanne says, do it. And I'm like, I don't know, but maybe I'll think about it. The point is, you cannot do what any of us say to do, because we're all different. So be yourself, accept yourself as you are, because whether you believe it or not, you are exactly where you should be at this point in your journey. And that is perfectly fine, and it's excellent. This is only to give you ideas to get onto your path and not our path. And Kamran, I love that thumbs up. Do you want to say something?
I want to say thank you. And I also want to acknowledge Jeanne for being so open and candid about her life, so that we could connect with her world and see the journey that she went through. And I would like to really thank her for her candor and her trust in not only us, but also those listening.
And that's important.
Yeah.
Because if you're just out there listening, I'm looking at the chat, people are saying, yes, awesome, and all kinds of things. We appreciate it, but we don't want to take away your individuality. Everyone is a flower. Think of this planet as a garden. And there's roses and there's daisies and there's weeds and dandelions, and then there's the hyacinthia. And every piece is important to the world. I don't care if you think you're a weed, you are extremely important to the world. You're here for a reason. Take that reason and fly with it. Jeanne, you look like you're going to say something. I was going to talk to Jeff, but I think Jeff is writing something down.
Taking notes.
I wanted to.
Notes on me?
Yeah, I ran out of, I have
because
I use books. I all sorts of stuff. I write stuff down on. Yeah.
Yeah, and
because
Carla
what
was
you
in the
say is
flow, stayed in
insightful.
the flow.
Yeah, I'm shaking my head yes, because I actually ran across, and it was more of a meme than anything, but it was a little story where somebody's trying to figure out their purpose in life, and that's one of those things, one of those concepts that I struggle with from time to time. That why am I here? What am I supposed to do? And the story goes that this woman is looking for her purpose, and God speaks to her and says, "Did you not pick up that little boy who skinned his knee and calm him down? Did you not smile at the stranger as they walked by and tell them, what a beautiful scarf they had? Did you not?" And he goes through this litany of things, little things that this woman had done over the last couple of days. And she goes, "Yes, but what am I supposed to do in this world?" And the answer was, "Be kind, you're doing it." So
Wow.
sometimes we want to put so much emphasis on what it is we're supposed to be, or who we're supposed to stand for. And in reality, there are 7 billion people in this world, and we are unique. There's not one person out there that's been to the same schools that I went to, had the same parents that I had, and went through the same work that I went through. So my stories are going to be different than Carla's stories. Carla's experiences are going to be different than Jeff's, and Jeff's are different than Kamran's. But we each bring a unique set of skills and insights. And sometimes it's simply giving somebody a smile and showing them that they're part of the world. And oftentimes, and I'll admit this freely, sometimes I don't want to go out the door. I'm tired, I'm overwhelmed. I've got a long list of to-do stuff. And as we talked about, I break that down so it's like 2 or 3 things, so I'm not overwhelmed. However, the most important thing I can do is show up in the world, as Jeff said, show up in the now. And if my friend calls and says, "I really need to talk to somebody," I drop everything and I talk. It doesn't matter what else I had on my plate, because that person needs me. And that's how we show up uniquely in the now. And sometimes that's our first step to change. Because if I can see me make a difference in Cameron's life, because Cameron and I have a conversation and he goes, "Thank you, I didn't see it that way." I can walk away going, "Oh yeah, that was valuable." And that might be the first step for me to change my outlook for that day. And changing my outlook for that day is the first step in changing the journey I'm going to take for that week. Jeff, you're going to jump in. I get
Well,
it.
I wrote this down twice already, and I figured I might as well say it because I wrote it down when he first started talking, and then when Carla was talking, it reminded me. And I have a phrase I call it "change your mind, change your life."
Yes.
And it's a mantra, it's an affirmation, and it's something just to think about, because I run into so many people who are panic stricken at a moment because something happened, and then they realize, well, things aren't as bad as they thought they were, but they have that panic, and I just, when I can get them to focus on the moment, and then they shift that mind space, all of a sudden they're happy again, or at least they're not panic stricken, and they're no longer in fight or flight mode. And so, and frankly, if we can put ourselves on those journeys, and I cannot tell you how important self-love is, and the ability to give ourselves those moments of joy and delight. And during the holiday season, I'll tell you, just like your birthday, if you could have some sort of artificial intelligence agent look at your browser history, give yourself a budget of $50 or $100 for your own present, and somehow get your bot to buy you the gift that no one else will ever buy you because they don't know what you really, really want, but your browser really, really does. We don't have to talk about what those may be, but we all have those secrets. And why not have secrets? Have a secret, I call it a Secret Santa app that looks at your browser history and just buys it for what you've been looking for anyway. Because hey, you might as well. Life is short. Have fun with that. So change your mind, change your life.
I love it.
Jeff, now that you've said that, I am going to reveal something that I was not going to reveal on.
Ooh. Drum roll.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think there better be a drum roll. You're the only 3 or 4 people know this happened. I had a lease car. The lease came to an end and I needed to make a decision. And finances aren't exactly where they need to be for me to make that decision, but the car dealer worked with me and I actually manifested the car that I wanted. Different color and not quite all the features I wanted, but enough of the features that I realized that it was in my mindset that I couldn't do it. And finally, I decided I'm breaking out of this and I'm going to do it anyway. And I've seen since I made that decision, changes happening in my life that I had been wanting to happen for a long time. I also made a post revealing something about myself recently. So, the point is, if we keep everything locked inside because we've been told, don't talk about it until it happens, and we begin believing, oh, when I get to that place, it'll become wonderful, but it's not going to be wonderful until that point, we are going to be missing out on what could happen. So it's time to kind of open up our own thinking and realize that it's there for us to have it. Kamran, you wanted to say something?
No. I just, I'm enjoying your flow today. You're at your best, Carla.
Yes. I said things are changing very rapidly. Jeanne?
I have a visualization that I oftentimes, it comes to me when I'm in a meditative, contemplative state, and it's like we're wrapped in paper mache, that we've put ourselves in this kind of statue that keeps us, with my granddaughter, you swaddle a baby, but keeps you in form, if you will. And that's how we show up in the world a lot of times, in that form that we've put ourselves in. And periodically in my meditation, I'll see myself moving my arms and breaking the paper mache and, getting out of the confines that I put myself in. And that's what you were just talking about with the car and manifesting. We have thoughts in our minds that we're not even aware of half the time, because we have 80,000 thoughts at any given moment flipping through our mind, but we only know 1 or 2 that we hear about. And it's really interesting because those 1 or 2 thoughts that we pay attention to are usually the meanest ones in our head. But if you start to, like, I learned a lesson fairly recently that, as much as I hear my dad's voice saying, you can do better, it's not good enough, try harder, which always means I'm falling short. I realized in his upbringing and in his career in the military, that's what he learned. So this was his language of love. His pushing me was his language of love. And when that changed my perspective, and I was able to crack some of that paper mache out, and that changed how I show up in the world, which then changes how people react to me showing up in the world. So it's a chain reaction. So when I visualize breaking that cocoon paper mache thing in my own head and in my own meditation, that's when I know I've hit something, a new level, and I'm growing. And that's what, when you talked about your car, that's kind of what I saw, and that's what, when I was working with the hypnotherapist years ago, she was trying to get me to see this, that I was holding myself back, and she was trying to explain it, but I couldn't see it. I couldn't understand it. It was beyond my current perception. Now, I've talked with her off and on for 20 years. And now when we talk, she's like, do you remember how naive you used to be? And I just laugh. I go, that wasn't naive. That was learning. That was allowing myself to be open. Because do you know that the person that I was brought up to be would never listen to somebody like you? We were told that you were kind of like a witch. you know, and she's like, really? And I went, yeah, you know, I actually grew up in a it's a religion basically, but you know, we weren't supposed to go into any other religions because God would open up the skies and smite us, you know, and as I've grown spiritually, I respect all the religions out there because we all have, I think we all have the same destination. We just have different words, as you were said earlier. And so when I was talking to this woman, she's a good friend of mine now. I was like, one, you started this thing, meditation, and my sister told me meditation is the devil's, you know, groundwork. And I just looked at my sister and I was like, what? So I changed the word from meditation to visualization, and my sister was good with that. You know, okay, we'll do a visualization. And inside my head, I'm going, yeah, that was me using the Rege's thesaurus on you. So okay, so my changing perspective took a long time, but I did it step by step. So I wasn't even aware of it. So when I'm talking with my friend, the hypnotherapist, she thinks it's hilarious to go back in time. You know, when she accused me of being conservative and afraid, basically, you know, and I took umbrage. You know, I was sent to her to learn how to manage stress. And I'm like, how can you help me manage stress? You're causing me stress, you know. But looking back 20 years, you know, I'm going, wow, she did a good job. She kind of knocked me out of my comfort zone, and I've grown a lot. And so that perspective, Carla, that you just talked about is important.
I just wanted
along with that, can I just add something, Jeff? Go talk. I'll add one.
No, real quickly, both Carla and Jeanne, both of you really are referring to what I call quantum manifestations. The ability to actually visualize something that you want, believe in it, and then have it happen. And that and the general rule is if you can close your eyes, visualize it, believe you'll get it, you can get it. And that's all about quantum manifestations. And secondly, the one requirement for it though is to remove FUD. Remove all fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And that if we could learn to let go of the FUD of in our lives and find the light even in the darkest days that we experience, life is just different. And our journeys will continue to be blessed regardless, but perhaps we could have less stress in our lives as a result. If we learn to believe in what we want, allow the possibility of that to come in, and that's part of the quantum manifestation process, and just remove FUD. And we do that, life is more joyful each and every second, each and every moment, because every moment does matter.
And that's the point. We think, oh no, this isn't happening. I'm just going to cry through it and feel bad. But what is happening is for us and not to us. Allison, I miss her so much, used to say that to me all the time. And I'm like, okay, I'm off of Facebook Live. I can't do my shows. But at that time, I needed that time to regroup and figure out what's going on with me. I still need that time. I always need to figure out what's happening. But the point is, we're all growing and we're all equal at this. It isn't that Jeff, because he speaks in crazy terms. I'm using the word crazy only because I can't think of a better word.
I love you for that. It's fine.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure. In crazy terms, and Kamran is so reasonable. I'm like, why doesn't he break in? I know he has something to say and he won't say it unless he says, can I say something? He's getting better at that. He didn't say that today at all. And Jeanne just breaks in when she needs to break in to make sure I stay on topic. And sometimes I do it and sometimes I don't. But the important thing here is that there's so much going on in the world. And sometimes I think, oh, I'm beneath them. I can't do what they're doing and I'm not going to do it well enough. And then Kamran comes up and said, Carla, you were amazing. And I'm like, what? I was listening to you and I couldn't even think those words. It isn't that someone's higher or below us. It's just how we think. And when we give everyone the opportunity to be who he or she is, look at what the world could be. What a beautiful garden we could be. And this includes the criminals in the world. They're just looking for their way of being to express themselves. If there was more equality in the world, these people could be doing wonders. But we stop them because we're thinking that someone needs to be a certain way. Someone needs to think this way or think exactly like me and they'll understand. I had someone on the English show yesterday and I felt really bad and I kept on saying, I hope I'm not being mean to you, but you are talking way too fast and I don't understand them. And he started again and I'm like, I can't understand you, speak slower. And he said, go on to the next person. I can't do it. And I said, yes, you can. And I'm not going to the next person until you do it. And it got him to do it. We get so darn nervous and so determined to look a certain way that we forget that we are all equal on this planet and no one is better or worse. And that includes Jeff and Kamran and Jeanne for me. Kamran.
Yes, I would like to conclude with a thought, which is I came across an acronym, LEAP. So leap of faith is a cliche, but I think the word leap and the alphabets, the letters that comprise it, learn, explore, act, and practice. I love this acronym. So
did that just come to you, or have you been?
No, I came across this acronym in an organization that has branded a plan, an idea of development within the organization, which is really emphasizing learning. The intent is to learn. We can only learn when we explore, and to explore, we will find ways, act on them, and then practice in order to make it a skill. So LEAP, I thought, is a summation from my side for today's show.
I love it. And we are over time. I didn't realize it. Jeff, do you want some last words for the day? You are coming back. You know that. So.
I will be back. I'll just say I'm grateful to all of you and everyone who's listening to being part of the conversation. I wish everyone the best of the holiday season, and to just remember every day matters, every moment matters, and I appreciate the chance to be here and to listen and to present and to be heard. So much love and light to all of you, and I look forward to being back the next time.
Okay, Jeanne, and then I'll close the show.
Sure. I just want to remind folks that just taking that step, putting one foot in front of the other, we can get through whatever life gives us and enjoy the journey.
And now that you said that, I don't know how this came into my mind, Jeanne, but I want to remind people that I have a YouTube channel. It's Giggle Fest University. If you like this show, do me a favor. Go there, subscribe, watch a few seconds, say you like the show, or even if you don't like the show, I don't care. Say something, comment, because I need to build this channel up. And you would be a great help to do this. And having said that, we will be back on Tuesday with another great topic. And I already have a definite confirmation for someone to be there on Tuesday, Jeanne. And I'll tell you later. we'll see you then, but I cannot keep these men here any longer or they'll kill me and there will be no show next week at all. Bye. See you next week.